Is really Mike Ashley the root of all troubles for Newcastle? Hello and welcome to the What If League. Today's experiment is going to be about Newcastle United, and in more specifics, we are going to make their owners front-end sugar daddy. A foreground sugar daddy, apologies. So what this means in reality is that their owner is going to pump incredible sums into the team, but also they're going to have some high expectations, meaning that they might require very good performance from the team, probably trophies, and they also might require from the manager to hire very high-profile players. The money, however, can also be spent in improving the stadium, training facilities, youth facilities, and in general to improve the reputation of the team. The experiment is going to begin on the 22nd of January 2018, meaning that Rafa Benitez will not have the 2017 summer transfer window to buy players with the newfound riches from the new Magpies owner, but still they're going to have quite enough time to develop as we are going to follow the next 3.5 seasons and maybe even more further beyond. At the moment, as you can see, nothing is really surprising, but now I'm going to fast forward until the end of season 2017-2018 to see how do they perform in their very first season with their super rich owner. Here we are, it's the 2nd of June 2018, and as you can see, Newcastle have finished 12th, so this is not really a very big improvement on their performance. Let's just quickly have a look at the player stats screen here while we're at it. And what I can tell you from first glance is that Bakary Sagna has been purchased, and he has been player of the match 5 times, which is the most any player has managed to do so since the 22nd of January when the experiment began. We can also see that the Toon Army ended the season with a loss against Chelsea at home at St James's Park, so that is quite unfortunate for them to close the season like that. But let's also see what happened with their owner and what also they are going to do next season. So Rafa Benitez is still their manager. And going quickly through the landmarks page, we can see that they have a new president, Paul Norris, who has taken over, which means that the club is no longer owned by the foreground sugar daddy. I'm going to repeat the same exercise and put the foreground sugar daddy again in the club. So we're going to make this Paul Norris a very rich person who is willing to spend insane amounts of money on Newcastle United. Before I do that, and before we then fast forward 3 more years into the future, we can also see that their youth category has been lowered to category 2. I'm not sure if this is because of the advances in technology in the game, or it's because that there haven't been a lot of investments. But let's also have a look at the transfers history to see what happened and who did Rafa Benitez decide to buy with his newfound riches. So as you can see, even though he only had a few days in January, he managed to spend 6 million. So this is this is quite something from Rafa. He decided to go immediately to buy some players, and he bought Nacho from Valladolid. He signed Bakary Sagna on a free transfer. Tahid Chong, who is a very young left winger from Manchester United. Joaquin Correa from Sevilla, and Ganso. Ganso is now their key player. Let's have a look. Ganso is a 28-year-old Brazilian who can play as an attacking midfielder, so he's probably now the creative spark of Newcastle. It's very interesting. What does this mean for Merino, who is, I think, their current main creative output? And quickly to have a quick look also at their tactic screen. So Dwight Gale is now their main striker. On the other side, we can see that Richie and Correa are playing on the wings with Mohamed Diame as the number 10. Ganso and Jonjo Shelby are in the middle of the field, and the defensive line is not really surprising. Dummett, Clark, Mbemba, and Yedlin playing just in front of Rob Elliott. Looking now at their schedule screen to see how did they fare in the Cups. So in the League Cup, they went away to Liverpool. That's something we already know. In the FA Cup, they were eliminated by Bournemouth in the end of February after drawing at home and losing in their away visit. As you can see in the bottom of the screen here, they didn't end the season very well. They recorded 3 losses, 1 draw, and only 1 win in their last 5 games, and the twin was at home at West Brom. On the other hand, they had to play 3 very tough matches at home to Arsenal, then visiting Everton, and again hosting Chelsea. So this was not the easiest set of fixtures for them. But let's also see now what happens 3 more years into the future if Rafa Benitez manages to keep his job under the new under the new foreground sugar daddy owner. It is now year 2021, so Happy New Year, guys. Actually, Happy New Year 3 times for you since 2018 when you are probably watching this video. In the previous year, we saw that Newcastle finished 12th and Manchester City were crowned champions above United, Chelsea, and Liverpool in the top 4. Let's see what happened next year. Next year, we see that Newcastle finished even lower, 16th place, and I'm not sure if Rafa Benitez kept his job, but we'll have a look at that in a second. Then Manchester United were champions that year. They were followed by Tottenham, Manchester City, and Burnley. Burnley were breaking into the top 4, even though Newcastle have the sugar daddy owner. Burnley are really doing incredible things here. 2 points above Liverpool, managed to qualify for the Champions League. Quite the stuff of dreams. Then in the third season, Manchester United were champions while Newcastle were still 16th, so not really a lot of progress for them, even though they have a very, very rich owner. In the final year of the current experiment, we can see that Newcastle have jumped significantly into 8th place. I imagine there have been a lot of new transfers and a lot of money spent. That same season, Manchester City spent, apologies, not spent, but they became champions with 87 points, 5 more than Manchester United. Now switching our attention to Newcastle United, you can see that Slaven Bilic is now their head coach, which means that Rafa Benitez either left the role or has been sacked. My bet is on sacked. Samuel Bastien is now their top player. He's a Belgian player. I'm not really familiar with him. Emre Mor is also in the team. Let's see. Samuel Bastien is 24. He's a midfielder that is capable to play all across the midfield line, and he has been bought from Kievo for 16.25 million pounds in the year before. Let's have a look quickly at the tactics screen, and we will also then check the transfers that have been done in the previous years. So Slaven Bilic is now playing with Moussa Dembele. Is this the Celtic player? Yes, this is the Celtic striker who has been doing wonders in the past 2 years in the Scottish Premier League. He is now applying his trade in Northern England, so probably scored a lot of goals. Ryan Sessegnon has been purchased from Fulham. He is now playing on the left. Joaquin Correa, who we saw that Rafa Benitez brought from Sevilla, is now playing in the number 10 role. Dodi Lukebakio, I'm not familiar with that name. 23-year-old Belgian. He's a right winger and also capable to play as a striker. He has been bought from Anderlecht for 4.5 million. Some other names are also popping up here. For example, Ruben Neves has been bought from Wolverhampton, who probably impressed in the championship, and then he managed to secure a transfer to the Newcastle team that is now one of the richest, I imagine, in England and the world. Now, before we continue looking at the transfers, let's see what happened in the head coach section. So Rafa Benitez resigned from the role. I imagine that Rafa retired. Let's have a quick look. Yes, retired as staff. So Rafa Benitez retired in the end just before the start of season 2018-19. He was replaced by Alessandro Dal Canto, who was sacked a bit more than a year later, so year and in 4 months. He was sacked at the 23rd of November 2019, and Mikel Antia has replaced him as the interim coach. Then Newcastle decided to hire Cesare Prandelli to lead them. He was also sacked, unfortunately, a year and 88 days later. So then Mikel Antia took charge again, and Slaven Bilic is now the current manager. He was hired on the 21st of March this year. Very interesting to see if Slaven Bilic managed to make impressive turnaround with Newcastle. So he was hired on the 23rd of January. Let's see where this is. 23rd of January is here. So his very first game was a loss against Liverpool. Then they recorded another loss when visiting Stoke, and things didn't go much better after they lost to West Bromwich Albion at home. But afterwards, things started to look up, and we can see here that they have. So this is a loss, a win, 3 wins in a row. and then 4 wins in a row. This is very impressive stuff from Newcastle. 4 wins in a row, which managed to take them to the ninth place, and in the end they finished eighth. But now let's have a quick look at Newcastle's transfers, and afterwards we're going to see the English Cup competitions and the European competition. Starting from the first season, we already saw who the Rafa Benitez decided to buy. In the next year, we can see, let me just have a quick look. So Joaquin Correa was initially brought to St. James's Park on a paid loan, but they decided to make this permanent and bought him for 6 million for £6 million. They also bought Steve Mounier from Huddersfield, the French striker. So who do we have? Else do we have here? Interesting. Leighton Baines is a very interesting transfer. Federico Fernandez is also quite interesting for me. We can see that they bought Ike Ugbo, who I'm not familiar with, probably a young player. Yeah, a striker and a winger from Chelsea. I'm not sure if he played enough time. Michel from Las Palmas has been brought for £9.5 million, and also Medhi Benatia. So Medhi Benatia came on loan. Was his move? Yes, his move was made permanent. He's now playing in the under 23s, probably because he's quite old at this time. He's 34. On the other side, in the outgoing screen, let's see if we have a major transfer. Christian Atsu left for Hoffenheim. Who else? Nacho left for Las Palmas. Javi Manquillo for Wolfsburg. Jamal Lascelles went to Aston Villa to play on loan. And Ashraf Lazar, so he is now in Benfica after he went through Feyenoord. Very interesting turn of events for Ashraf Lazar. Henry Saivet was also sold to Galatasaray. Deandre Ledrin is now playing in the Russian league, and Florian Lejeune is now also playing in the Russian league, but respectively in CSK, while Deandre Ledrin is playing his trade at Spartak Moscow. Next season, the interesting transfers. Medhi Benatia's transfer was made permanent after Newcastle spent £8 million. They bought him from Juventus. Ji Dong Won from Augsburg has been purchased for nearly 6 million. Michael Lang from Aston Villa, who else? A very interesting transfer season here. You can see that this transfer window, Newcastle were extremely active. They spent a total of £85 million. They also brought Marco Brighton, Pablo Maffeo, Kyle Naughton is here. We can see a lot of names. It's very interesting. What they probably built a whole new team here. On the other side, in the outgoing, do they have interesting things? Bakary Sagna was sold to Kyon, so even though they signed him on a free, he did his job and then went for a fee. So very good stuff here from Newcastle. They actually made a profit on that player. Probably not if we have to consider his wages, of course, and his signing bonuses and other fees. We can see that there were not a lot of big outgoing transfers. Jose Perez was sold to Zenit St. Petersburg for 5.5, and Jamal Lascelles, who went to play on loan to Aston Villa, was sold to Birmingham. Very interesting turn of events. I'm not sure if the Villa fans would enjoy that a lot, but this is what the game decided for him. And in the last season, transfers were even more significant. £115 million were spent by the Newcastle team. We can see that they bought Moussa Dembele from Marseille. So Marseille probably initially bought him from Celtic. Let's have a quick look here what happened. Yes, indeed, Marseille bought him for 18.5 million, and then they made a very healthy profit after selling him for 34 million to Newcastle. Ryan Sessegnon, the left fullback and winger, who is now completely adapted to playing as a winger, they bought him from Aston Villa, who purchased him from Fulham for 9.25. So again, a very healthy profit, 20 millions of profit to be honest for the Villains. Very good business for them. We can see also Reece James, David Luiz. They brought David Luiz on a free, 34 years old. I imagine that this is for his experience. Very surprising and very impressive as well. Emre Mor, who is a young player, a young Turkish player that actually was considered to be in the target list of one of the top European teams. In reality, I'm very surprised that he has ended up in Celta Vigo, and then we can see that he failed there very spectacularly because his value went down from 11.5 to 4.9 million pounds. Hopefully now in Newcastle he's going to revive his career. They also bought Kevin Wimmer from Southampton for a lot of money, 32 million pounds. Reece Nelson has been brought on loan from Arsenal. Who else we say we see here? The four more players. I'm not really familiar with them. Hopefully, they will bring more success to the Newcastle team. In the outgoing section, more notably, Isaac Hayden has been sold to Leicester. Ji Dong-kwon, who they brought the previous season, has been sold to Nice for unfortunately a loss of $500,000, as you can see. Kyle Naughton has been sold to Wolverhampton. Federico Fernandez has been sold to Lille. Chancel Bemba to Besiktas. Who else is here? Those are, I think, the most notable transfers. Mikhail Grigoric, who is that player? I'm not really familiar with him. He's an attacking midfielder, also capable to play as a winger or as a striker. They bought him from Augsburg, but then they sold him to Eibar for another $500,000 loss. Now, as promised, let's have a quick look at the English Cup competitions before we go and check what happened in the European competitions for these 3.5 seasons when Newcastle were building up their squad and their reputation to start challenging the top teams in England. So in the FA Cup, Manchester United and Liverpool dominated that trophy. Newcastle did not manage to win any trophies, but this I think is something that I could tell you from the head coach's screen. In the League Cup, West Ham and Manchester United and Chelsea won that trophy. In the last 3 years, Newcastle unfortunately once again were not able to compete here. I'm going to go very quickly through the Euro Cup and Champions League. I'm not going to focus them a lot. I just want to see who are the champions. And as you can see, Benfica, Liverpool, and Chelsea have won the Europa League in the last 3 years. And let's move on one tier up to the Champions League. Dortmund, Barcelona, and Atletico Madrid were crowned champions of Europe in these last 3 seasons. That's not really surprising. Those are all top teams. You can see Juventus won the first title here, and hopefully Newcastle will manage to pump up some steam and then try to challenge for the places that give access to the European competitions in the next seasons. So I am going to make a second video for this experiment where Newcastle try to compete in the Premier League for 3 more years. For now, I think this would be enough for the first video. Thank you everybody for watching. If you haven't seen the rest of my channel, please make sure you do so. Also, please like this video and subscribe if you want to receive notifications for when I upload new videos. In the meantime, you can also check out my social media. Links are provided in the description. Let me know what do you guys think about this experiment and what would you like to see next. I would love to hear from you in the comments to discuss how Newcastle are faring with this interesting concept of having a foreground sugar daddy owner who is not acting in the same way as Mike Ashley is acting in reality. So, thank you everybody for watching. Until the next time, bye.